fantastical worlds, sweeping picturesque landscapes, laughter amongst friends, silent tears of determination, a warm meal. Studio Ghibli is one of the most highly regarded animation studios in the world. Films such as Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind have been capturing the imagination and hearts of audiences for over 40 years now. From vivid wide shots of magical lands unknown, to a young girl cooking breakfast in her small apartment. The studio, with Hayao Miyazaki's work specifically, has had such a universal cultural impact. Ushering the name of Ghibli may bring you thoughts of coziness and nostalgia. You might find your mouth watering while thinking of their fluffy, juicy animations of food. As a vegetarian, not even I can resist salivating over the sizzling cuts of bacon in Howl's Moving Castle. The coziness and warmth isn't the only thing that categorizes Ghibli, however. It's also the unique characters and storytelling of the studio that draw us into their worlds. The characters feel like real people, still living and breathing once we turn off the TVs or step out of the theater. We see their daily routines, their friends, and their weaknesses. There's an emphasis on the mundanity of life that brings a sense of realism to Ghibli and Miyazaki's films. This is what defines the Ghibli experience more than anything. It would be no surprise to say the uniqueness of the studio, along with its popularity, has inspired many creatives from all kinds of fields. Some may be inspired by the art design, while others may be inspired by the natural dialogue. Over the years, aspects of Ghibli have been molded into how artists who grew up with these films have told their own stories, letting their visions run wild while still holding on to that feeling they got when they first watched their favorite Ghibli film. Mine is Princess Mononoke, if anyone's asking. One series that always gave me the same feeling that I got from Ghibli ever since I first came across it was Snow White with the Red Hair by Sorata Akiduki, a lovely fantasy shoujo manga that is set in the fictional kingdom of Clariness. I found this series through its 2-season anime adaptation, shortly followed by me having read all the available volumes because I was quickly growing obsessed. It felt so cozy, whimsical, and realistic. All the same feelings that Ghibli is known for. So it was no shock to me when I found out that Sorata Akiduki was inspired in her own right by these magical animated movies. Before we continue, I want to give a quick shout out to Anime Feminist, who sent me over this Watch More Shoujo mug. They just launched a new line of Watch More Shoujo merch, and you can get a mug, a tank top, a t-shirt on their website. I'll leave the link down below. Go ahead and join the revolution, guys. Watch more shoujo. Snow White with the Red Hair is an ongoing shoujo manga series that is published in La La magazine. It follows an herbalist named Shirayuki who has beautiful bright red hair. Due to the rarity of her hair in this world, she often finds herself in sticky situations. One day, the prince of her country, Tamburun, decides he wants to take Shirayuki in as his concubine, as her hair is the talk of the town. To keep her own freedom, Shirayuki chops off her hair that the prince so desperately wants and flees her country. Shirayuki is traveling alone until she happens upon a trio who find her sleeping in an abandoned house. The group of Zen, Kiki, and Mitsuhide are wary of her at first until she proves herself as an herbalist, and they all begin to grow closer. Zen in particular takes a liking to Shirayuki as they continue to bond together. After a series of events almost forces Shirayuki back to Tamburun, Zen reveals that he is actually the second prince of Clariness, Zen Wisteria. From there, Shirayuki decides to live in his country and aim to become a court herbalist in the palace that he resides in. What started as a pretty traditional romance fantasy manga grew more into a slice of life series as it unfolded. Once the series changed magazines from Lala DX to Lala around volume 8, or where the anime ended, is where it shifts gears a little. It began to focus more on the daily lives of its cast of characters, with the political aspects of the kingdom heightening the overall conflict. While the core of the series still revolves around the romance and relationships shared between Zen and Shirayuki, Snow White definitely found its central charm after this change, giving the depth of the characters and their love for each other the largest portion of attention. This is why most of this video will be spent analyzing the series after Volume 8. However, it will be general enough that I won't give many, if any, spoilers. As I've mentioned already, Studio Ghibli has inspired many. It would probably be safe to say that a large majority of mangaka have been influenced by their works. However, with Akiduki specifically, she has pointed out these aspects of Ghibli herself in an interview she did with Lala in 2021. This confirmed my own suspicions about the series being inspired by Ghibli. Akiduki says she admires and hopes to portray the same natural, realistic storytelling in her own works. Knowing this, I believe that many of the intentional choices of Ghibli that makes their films so special is what makes Snow White so special in turn. Firstly is the more surface level observation of Studio Ghibli films, the delicious looking food. While it is a bit easy to attribute their movies to some piping hot ramen or sunny side up eggs, there is a comfort in seeing them. They feel very real to our own experiences. To cook and to eat is to be human. Mealtime is often a relaxing activity for people, and portraying this gives us a sense of ease. The food in Ghibli lends to the atmosphere of the films while we watch these characters enjoying a meal. Snow White also uses their meal scenes and food in the same way to relax the reader. The scenes often take place in a busy tavern lit by a fireplace, and Zen or Shirayuki are surrounded by their friends. Steam is shown coming off a table full of pot pies, hearty meats, and dumplings. Warm mead fills their glasses. They share a laugh together, exchanging stories or just talking about everyday things that are happening in their lives. Their stomachs are filled and their hearts are full. You get a sense of community and happiness as they all dig in together. Akiduki states that she would rather portray the temperature of the food instead of the lighting, valuing the atmospheric illustration over the realistic one. The lighting or the shading on the illustrations of food is less of the focus than the steam that emits from it. There's really nothing more cozy than a warm meal or a hot drink, especially when we are shown that the environment outside is either snowing or raining, which it often is in the northern parts of Clareness. The food isn't the only thing that makes Ghibli or Snow White feel cozy though. A core tenet to the storytelling of Ghibli is to portray the human experience. Even in their most otherworldly story settings with cute creatures or terrifying monsters, people are still at the heart of it. The characters feel like real people that we may seek to be friends with or want to be just like. They are fleshed out in every aspect of their lives, down to the unique way in which they run. It's the good-naturedness of the characters that leaves you feeling warm and fuzzy whenever you're experiencing either piece of media. Neither have characters that are solely flawless though. They make mistakes and are imperfect like anyone else, but they keep looking forward whenever they falter. Their journeys are often defined by improving themselves and seeing the best in others. Characters in both may be brought down time and time again, but it's their joys and hardships that are the pinnacle of the human experience. This is a key way that Ghibli connects us to them, using immersive realism. Immersive realism is a term mostly thrown around whenever talking about Studio Ghibli films. The term is defined as a deep absorption or immersion in something like an activity or an environment, while including realism. Many reference the way that Ghibli characters run or interact with their surroundings that makes the world they live in feel more real. Spending a moment to show the wind blowing through hair or clothes makes the image feel real. These details may not necessarily move a plot forward, but they make us feel what the character feels. Take, for example, the scene from Howl's Moving Castle where Sophie and Markle are hanging up laundry by a lakeside before having a picnic. The breeze breeze is gently flowing through the sheets and shirts that are hanging out to dry. Sophie and Markle set out chairs and a table next to the beachside. In the background, the water reflects light off of its surface. Sophie looks out upon the water wistfully as she talks with Markle. This scene doesn't necessarily move any plot forward, and if you cut it out of the film, you don't lose any of the story. But it would, however, take us away from a moment that immerses us in the world of Howl. We wouldn't have a scene that grounds us briefly in Sophie's serene contentment. In the same way that Ghibli uses this immersive realism, so does Snow White with the red hair. The humanity present in their movies is what Akiduki admires most about them after all. She expressed the desire to convey this humanity in her own series, which I believe she does wonderfully, leaving that deep breath between core changes in the plot or story, letting her characters enjoy each other's company before separating once again to move forward on their own paths. You are grounded in the characters of Shiryuki, Zen, Kiki, Mitsuhide, and Obi because the story allows them to sit together, interacting with each other naturally as old friends would. They catch up with one another, chatting about their current goals or anxieties. Akiduki states in the same interview that she enjoys letting the story progress through these conversations that characters have with one another, saying that the deepening of their relationships moves the story and the characters forward and even changes their outlook in the long term. The immersion in the details is not lost in this series either. The coats, capes, and dresses on the characters sway in the imaginary wind that runs through the panels. During party scenes, people are seen chatting in the background, or kids are running around laughing with delight. Rooms that we see the characters waking up in feel lived in. It may be messy or unorganized, or neat and tidy based on their personality, subtly making us acknowledge that the characters may exist even when we are no longer looking. In many side panels throughout the volumes of Snow White, Akiduki talks about her travels to Europe amongst other places. She raves about her love for these locations, how many pictures she takes for references, and all about the delicacies of the cuisine. She's enamored with all of the castles she's visited and looks at the smallest of details, even down to the door hinges. This love for the tiny intricacies is reflected in the backgrounds of Snow White, which feel very European. Snowy military forts have an emptiness to them, as if a ghost could float through the halls at any moment. Although both the environment and the place are cold, it's melted away by the camaraderie between the soldiers once they are off duty. Busy libraries are filled to the brim with books that looks like they have infinite knowledge crammed inside, with the shelves themselves looking worn down due to the constant removal of their contents. Beautiful castle halls are adorned with the crest of the Wisteria family, while luxurious drapes are dangled from the ceiling and fall to the glossy marble floors. All of these things make the kingdom of Clariness feel like it has its own cultures and histories that we could easily step into. Some say that these moments of immersion where nothing happens are inconsequential. Some may argue it does nothing for the plot or the story. These criticisms have been levied against Ghibli films in the past, and especially before they gained notoriety outside of Japan. Despite this criticism, Miyazaki revels in this nothingness of his stories. He tells Roger Ebert in a 2002 interview that if everything is non-stop action, then it's nothing but busyness, specifically pointing out the Japanese word ma, which is the negative space or emptiness, which is just as important as the rest of the art. I often hear this nothingness is the same issue that many have with Snow White with the red hair as well. The story does have an overarching plotline which is focused on the relationship between Zen and Shiryuki, more specifically on how to close the gap in their social status and ultimately allowing each other to be together. But the story works through this slowly. It would rather focus on the natural progression of them as individual people and their relationships outside of one another at the same time. The first 5 volumes are spent letting Shiryuki and Zen grow closer to one another, noticing each other's strengths and weaknesses, each other's passions and dislikes. It gives time to let the two naturally fall in love with each other after enjoying each other's company, all while adjusting Shiryuki to her new life as an herbalist in Clareness, and showing us that their love may prove difficult as he is a prince and she is a commoner. The next 5 volumes are to have Shirayuki prove herself as a valuable asset to the kingdom, as well as someone who won't drag Zen down as a prince. In turn, Zen proves himself as a reliable prince to his older brother, one who will no longer run away from his duties and face his obligations seriously as Shirayuki inspired him to do. It isn't that there's nothing going on in Snow White. It's simply that Akizuki doesn't feel the need to rush. She wants to let us sit with these characters for as long as possible so we can come to understand them better. But the characters develop slowly through the way they interact with the world around them. Even just pausing to look at the sky gives us insight into what a character may be thinking. The emptiness is just as important as the busyness. The series just feels natural, like we happen to be observing the daily lives of both Zen and Shirayuki. This is most likely done purposefully, as Akizuki says that this is how Ghibli films feel to her. That even though they are directed and intentional, a candid moment just happened to be captured. We are a lost partygoer who passed by a door to catch a glimpse of Zen and Shirayuki mid-conversation on a balcony. We see them get up and begin to spin and dance to an orchestra inside their own heads. There's joyous smiles on both of their faces, and we've just accidentally been included in this moment. Much of what Ghibli is known for is also how I view Snow White with the red hair. It is a story about humanity at its core, about the people and relationships that you cultivate, as well as your impact on those around you. The characters' lives aren't always about conflict and overcoming strife. They can also be about celebration and happiness. Snow White is both challenging and comforting, and lets us enjoy this world we were invited into. There is a very clear love for Ghibli films in Akizuki's works. She incorporates this same love and humanity in her own stories, sharing that same radiant warmth she feels from Ghibli films with us. We are given fantastical worlds, sweeping picturesque landscapes, laughter amongst friends, silent tears of determination, a warm meal.